Now we are joined by Tony Gosling, historian and investigative journalist from Bristol. Mr. Gosling, welcome to the program. Is there any realistic prospect of holding Israelis accountable for its ongoing crimes against Palestinians in the current world order?
Well, look, that's a really difficult question, because I think in the future, yes, is the answer. Right now, I think most of the global institutions are controlled mostly by the United States, who is giving the Israelis a massive amount of protection. And that, of course, in itself is a war crime. Anybody that aids and abets war criminals is themselves opening themselves up for prosecution as war criminals. So both here in Britain and in the United States, the diplomatic services and the arms industry, as well as politicians that are supporting Israel verbally and through votes, they're all opening themselves up to potential prosecution in the future. Remember, we had crimes going on in Nazi Germany right the way from the mid-1930s, right the way through the Second World War to the end of the war, and it was only in 1946 that these people were executed after the Nuremberg trials. Many of them, of course, put in prison, like Rudolf Hess, who died in prison in the late 1980s. It looks like he was bumped off, actually. He was Hitler's deputy. But the point is, sometimes these sort of prosecutions can take a long time. We're seeing that figures for healthcare workers in Gaza killed in September, I was looking, it topped 1,000. So we're obviously looking at far more than that now. Now, this, of course, is a genocide. You're not allowed to kill one healthcare worker in war, and soldiers for many years in the West have understood that you do not allow targeting of hospitals. If you raid a hospital, then you're extremely careful about the way you do it. In fact, probably the best thing to do is just to go around the hospital and not to attack the hospital. So those are the rules of war as we know them. The Israelis have killed 1,000+ healthcare workers, saying, of course, that, oh, well, they're just secret Hamas members, or they're harboring Hamas. Actually, of course, many of the Hamas members are not combatants. They are part of civic society in Gaza, and you cannot legitimately target such people. So looking at the number of healthcare workers, around about 1,000, the number of children around about 10,000. I was just looking at the latest figures. The International Federation of Journalists have just released the figures for Gaza. We're now looking at 148 journalists have been killed in Gaza. This is more than were killed in the Second World War and the First World War put together. So there's an obvious deliberate targeting of children, healthcare workers and journalists. They're targeting the children because those children may grow up to fight them. And they're targeting the healthcare workers because the healthcare workers are saving the lives of the children and everyone else. And they're targeting the journalists because those journalists are spreading evidence around the world of war crimes. They're trying to intimidate the journalists from not going into Gaza, and my hat goes off to those who are in Gaza, because they are being deliberately murdered by the Israelis, and they're getting out the evidence of the crimes that are going on. We've also seen, of course, the backing of the Israeli regime by Donald Trump and his friends. Now, the similarities to Nazi Germany again crop up here, because we've just seen Donald Trump, the president-elect, announcing intentions of possibly invading countries like Greenland and Panama. Now, this is exactly the frame of mind that Adolf Hitler was in the late 1930s, invading Czechoslovakia, invading Poland, and deciding that every country that he feels like he can just walk right in there. So we have a very dangerous and very worrying situation. I think the countries in the Middle East, particularly the Arab countries, obviously Iran, many of the countries in the Middle East have done very well to stop this conflict exploding really into a world war, which it possibly could do.
Right. Now, Mr. Gosling, very briefly, if you can, despite overwhelming evidence pointing to systematic killings and genocide, there are still so many people reluctant calling this a genocide. Why?
Well, they're calling the conflict in Sudan a genocide, I see, the United States, but not that in Gaza. Well, how ridiculous and how absurd! This is the cant of a dying empire. That what they're doing is they're just being very selective about what they're seeing, and in fact there are suggestions that the United States and maybe the Gulf states are actually behind the rapid support forces in Sudan. Of course, it's a genocide. The actual fact is this is going to go on. They have set up a potential religious war. We in the United Kingdom are familiar with this tactic because we had a very similar conflict in Northern Ireland with the Catholics so-called versus the Protestants. It really had nothing to do with religion. It was more to do with land, and it was to do with industry and who had the power and the money in Northern Ireland. Exactly the same as here. This is fake Jews. The Zionists are really not genuinely Jewish. They are basically weaponizing the Old Testament in order to grab land. And the same is true with the Christian Zionists, like Donald Trump's friends and the people he's about to bring in. They are also fake Christians who don't believe actually in any of the love thy neighbor message of Jesus Christ at all. And so what they're actually going to do is, and they're already started doing this, turn the Holy Land into hell, raise hell in the Holy Land. And from that, I think they expect to get a major crisis, make a lot of money out of weapons, grab lots of land, and ultimately to discredit the very faith that they're professing, which is only going to pave the way for some kind of man-made, possibly a New Age religion, a man-made religion that they want to bring in the years to come.